Hey, go ahead,
All right,
Scott. Take
we're official now, aren't we?
it.
All right, our first hot stove. So, I think we're just going to do a round robin, kind of open it up to whatever's on your mind with baseball. We can talk about today or yesterday or whenever, but a lot going on. Um, so, if anybody wants to kick off a topic that they're interested in talking about,
Well,
go
I'm
for it.
kind of curious. What do you got? What does everybody think? I wasn't real impressed with these games in London or games in South Korea and all that. What does everybody think about that?
Yeah, I kind of understand. I was surprised. I tuned into the one game in London, and I was surprised at the crowd. It looked like they had a pretty full house.
Hmm.
But it seems like a lot of expenditure just for two games to fly the teams over and back.
And I kind of think what they did in spring training with what was it? The Padres and Dodgers making them go to South Korea in the middle of spring training. I mean, I get the concept of you want to grow the game, or I guess to me it seems like they want to have maybe more marketing opportunities, but it sort of doesn't make sense to me. It was kind of funny seeing the games from London. Um, I thought of it actually even before the announcers said it reminded me of an Expo game from the mid 80s or whatever from Olympic Stadium. It just seemed like yeah, it just seemed like a throwback almost to me.
Yeah,
What a play by Terens to end that second game.
Yeah, yeah. The heads up there. The no, he wasn't going to get that third. He had to go back to home and get it to first. And he got his legs taken out.
Right, right. Mm-hmm.
Well, what drove me crazy was, and I guess in the last year, I've always been a baseball fan generally and lived in too many places to get attached. But finally, after 40 years of living here, I've gotten on the Phillies bandwagon. They're a fun team to watch and whatever. But I mean, Hoffman pitches the eighth inning and they can't even touch him. It's like, eight pitchers or whatever it was, boom. And, manager by, he won't throw a guy more than one inning. And, and you bring a guy in and it all falls apart. I mean, how many times have we seen that? It's just, it's almost like why make a change when you don't need to?
yeah. I just don't understand a lot of the moves with pitching. I mean, I'm not a big fan of pitch counts and things like that. If the guy's going, let him. If he's going good, just let him keep going. I mean,
Well, to me, it sort of made no sense because it was, what was it, Sunday with an off day Monday.
mhm.
So there was absolutely no reason to take the guy out. It was almost like, they're tempting fate. Okay. The guy's got total command, boom, 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 bring him out again. It just seemed like as soon as they brought in, their closer, it's like, why in this setting? You just don't need to do that. But I don't know. That was my when I was watching it in real time, it just seemed like you just why make a move when you don't have to really make a move at that point.
Yeah. I don't know. Are they going to play any more games over there this year, or was that it?
I think that was that it for there. I don't know if there's something reminds me that there may be a Mexico. Somebody's going to Mexico at some point, I think, or somewhere else, I believe.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, it's
But
like the NFL. The NFL goes over there and plays in Spain. And all the Eagles are going to open up in Brazil.
mhm.
I mean,
I
I
didn't
can
know
understand.
that. Really? That's
Yeah. Is it the first game, Mike or Scott?
I'm not
You know?
sure. I'm not
I, th-
much of a football.
I think it's their first game. I think, but they're down in Brazil.
the other topic I had in mind was I saw in I get Sports Weekly still something actually in print, and they had an article where they were listing most picturesque stadiums, whatever, and they had
Major League?
Fenway on the list, Wrigley. But it surprised me. They came in with San Diego Petco Park as number one, which surprised me, having been there. I'd throw that open to discussion if anybody has any thoughts as to where their favorite, most picturesque place you've seen a game.
Did they pick Petco Park because of its setting in San Diego or for the park itself?
Well, and I'm familiar. I went to school in San Diego, so but back when they had Jack Murphy Stadium, um, I think it was really because some of the touches, it's an architectural marvel in the opinion of the writer, as opposed necessarily to, um, yeah, maybe they talked about, inside the ballpark a little bit and some of those things. But it surprised me because, again, being a traditionalist, you see almost every list with Wrigley, maybe Fenway, Dodger Stadium, well, and PNC Park, in Pittsburgh. So I was just surprised that they came up with, Petco Park is number one. I almost felt like, wow, there, somebody wants to shake it up a little bit. So,
Well, I think the PNC Park is a really nice one.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
It just it's won a lot of awards too.
and I think, from past experience, I've been able to get a ticket or two there for about 1/3 the price you'd pay at other places, especially when the Pirates have not been going well at different times. So.
Okay, that's the other thing. I remember the tickets were $1. They were so bad. And I would take them $5 and they'd go, I'd say, everybody come on.
One time I was out there for work, and I believe I bought a ticket for $2 or $3 on the bridge. I don't know if that was legal at the time, but I figured if I got ripped off, it was only for a buck or two, so it wasn't so bad.
Well, Chavez Ravine, the Dodgers ballpark usually gets high marks for its location, the setting that it sits in.
I think, from my recollection, they were number 8 on the list, which surprised me that was that far down and stuff. But I don't know. The thing that astounds me, and I'm sure it astounds everybody else, and our son, within the last year, moved to Chicago, so he's 1 mile from Wrigley. So we went out to see him about 2 weeks ago, and it was great to go to a game and then walk to his apartment and stuff like that. But where I was going with it was the old. I'm old enough to, when I started going to Yankee and Met games, the box seats were $4. I think reserved were $2.50 and bleachers were a buck or $1.50. My son couldn't go because of work, but our daughter flew out, and my wife and myself, and our 3 tickets down the right field line at Wrigley. I think it was with fees and stuff, it was $285. So
wow.
Things are not quite what they used to be.
Of course, you have that with fees, and so
that's fees.
With fees. Yeah, we were just looking at some concerts we're thinking about going to, and yeah, it's here's your price and then here's your fees, and so the fees are getting ridiculous.
I think it's gotten to a point where it's unfortunately they've priced out people from being able to just say, hey, I just want to take the family to a game tonight. You know what I mean? Or maybe they get to go. I mean, and forget about we can talk about what concessions cost. I remember I took my son to a Yankee game, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years ago, and I think at the time a water and a hot dog was like $17 or $18 or whatever it was. I mean, it's nuts. I don't think it has any basis in normal life and stuff like that.
Why I go to minor league games. I was just at Reading the other day, and $12, like third row from the field. You got a little table between you. You had a pregame concert. They had fireworks at the end. It was $12. You
Yeah.
can't beat that.
And free parking.
And free parking. Yeah, and then Dylan Cruz, one of the top prospects, was playing, so I got to see that. That says, you know, how it is.
I think that's really one of the, I mean, I obviously it's made the minor leagues so much more attractive than going to a game. And I mean it's fun. I mean, I took my wife because she doesn't understand like with the Phillies and stuff. She thinks they're supposed to win every night. But and they sort of have almost been doing that, but those two tickets, I wanted her first game. She had been to Citizens a long time ago, but we had pretty good seats, not the best, but pretty good, and that was pretty expensive. I don't think I told her exactly how much that cost. It was, I think you could go to a lot of Reading Philly games or Senator games or whatever for that price. So
Yeah.
I just sold my Phillies tickets for next Tuesday today. The wife saw it was supposed to be like 95 degrees, and she's like, I don't want to go. We have a 10 game, we have that 10-12 game plan. And that was one of the games. So again, you can put it on SeatGeek and you got to pay them fees,
mhm.
but you get your money back. I mean, easily right now, the Phillies, the way they're playing. So,
But do you guys have a favorite place you've ever seen a game?
Or nostalgia as a kid, the old Connie Mack Stadium, as a young kid going out to his first bowl games. That always sticks in my mind. I only saw the old Yankee Stadium one time, and that was in '98, so that sticks in my mind. But a favorite place, I can't really say I have a favorite place. I guess it might sound strange, but not for the ballpark itself, the vet in
Mhm.
Philadelphia. But maybe that stays out in my mind because I took my boys there when they were small. And
Mhm.
we lived in Philadelphia, and I was always taking them down there, and they were always getting the giveaways, whether they got a baseball glove or they got a backpack or something. But it was just something that stood out to me, of when they were little. I just remember the vet. It wasn't a great place to see a game. I mean, it was cookie cutter. It was just like Riverfront and Three Rivers. I mean,
And Shea Stadium and all that.
well,
Mhm.
they weren't the circular donuts like the vet was. I mean,
Yeah.
you could have been at second base in either one of any of those three stadiums. You wouldn't know which one you were in if it wasn't for the color of the seats.
But I ran across an article a while back. I've got a bunch of old sporting news from the late 60s, early 70s, baseball Bible, etc. And there was an article about the vet just before it opened, and essentially talking about the vet as a palace almost. You know what I mean? And it's funny, history will generally not remember it that way. Um, but
Well, I
yeah.
guess they were comparing it to where the Phillies were coming from Connie Mack Stadium. I mean, that was really long in the tooth.
Mhm. It seems like to me, again, Connie Mack doesn't that stadium doesn't get any of the like the way people talk about Ebbets Field in such a nostalgic, positive way. I don't think they say the same things about Connie Mack.
Well, all those old ballparks had a lot of nostalgia to them because all the great players played there.
Mhm. I was fortunate when I was really little. My grandfather started taking me to Yankee games. So we're talking mid 60s. Mantle, Maris, Elston Howard, and stuff. And Yankee Stadium at that point to a kid, it looked like the biggest thing in the world. With the monuments in center field, which I believe Babe Ruth was buried there, and Lou Gehrig and stuff like that. And I mean, it was really unfortunate that well, they quote unquote refurbished it in the 70s and then obviously tore it down eventually. They could have done a lot to keep it. It would have been,
They could have done to that what they did to Fenway.
yeah, because again, if anyone's been to the new Yankee Stadium, that essentially it's a shrine to the Steinbrenner family. It's just it has none of the warmth of a real ballpark.
Just to interrupt for a second, we have Steve on. Steve is a new chapter member, so I want to kind of introduce Steve and have Steve say a few words about himself. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, thanks, Frank. I appreciate it. Apologies that I was late. I did
No
not have the
problem.
most current version of Zoom uploaded on my computer. So, but no, I'm happy to join the group here. Um, I sent an email out just, kind of giving you a quick background. I just recently retired from the U.S. Air Force. Was stationed here in Carlisle Barracks. Um, and just kind of finding my footing during military retirement and just trying to get back into old hobbies and likes, and baseball is certainly one of them. Um, in my past, I've spent some time as an umpire. I did about 5 years of umpiring, high school baseball, and when I was in the Air Force, I was able to do Belgian baseball as well, excuse me, when I was stationed overseas, and that was really interesting. But no, it's just great to be part of the group. I'm a diehard Yankee fan, so listening to the stories of Tony about old Yankee Stadium, I made my first entrance into the new Yankee Stadium last year with my son. And you're right, Tony. Going to the old Yankee Stadium as a kid, the old box seats that were kind of, you know, boxed off and squared off there, sitting down there, being fortunate enough to have some family that were able to get us seats down there. And for me, that was, the 70s and 80s with, Don Mattingly and Willie Randolph and Dave Winfield and all those greats, Reggie Jackson, and watching those teams. And just, the aura of that ballpark was phenomenal. And, being in the new Yankee ballpark, it was interesting, but it doesn't quite have the same feel, and it doesn't quite have the same allure to it that the old one did. But nonetheless, it's the Yankees, and so that's okay. They're still the best, and I still root for them every day and check the box scores, and happy to see that they're doing so well this year. But no, I'm just happy to be part of the group, and thanks for the invite. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Steve, Mike Whiteman up there. He's the gentleman I referenced in the email the other day who writes for the Yankee blog. So if you get a chance to check out that Yankee blog, start spreading the news. It's excellent.
All right, thanks, Frank. I appreciate that.
Appreciate the shout out, Frank. Thanks.
No problem.
Frank, when you talk about the vet, I spent a lot of time, even though I'm a big Yankee fan, most of my boyhood baseball was going to the vet because I had a lot of buddies who had tickets to the vet, and one friend of mine had like season tickets, and we spent a ton of time at the vet. And it was not pretty, especially in like the mid 80s, but it was still baseball.
Yeah.
And the great thing about the vet is you could go in and you would be up in like the 600 level. And of course, that's upper deck. And somewhere, I don't know, around fifth, sixth inning, they would open up the gates. And then you would go down to the bottom level. And so then we'd end up in like the box seats.
Mhm.
So,
I did that.
yep. It was, I mean, again, like didn't have a whole lot of people going at, because Phil's were in kind of transition between the Schmidt and the Carltons, and then, before 93 or whatever. So they weren't that great. Weren't a lot of people there, but it was baseball. It was Major League Baseball. And so we loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we used to pay 50 cents to get the 700 level. We would sit at the very top. And as kids, we would just run. We weren't really watching the game. We were playing. We got the wooden bats, and we were playing ball up there, care less about the game. But then fifth inning, we all went down to the field as close as possible.
Yep. We all run around like the bullpens. We like harass the other pitchers' bullpens and stuff like that. It was great. It was just great.
But the one thing I remember about the vet, anytime they played the Mets, I swear there was more Mets fans there than there were Phillies fans. And there was always problems somewhere in the stadium. I'm sorry, Steve. It was a rowdy group that came down from New York.
Yeah, no, I've heard, I never had a chance to go to the vet, but I've heard, being a New York fan, I've heard that just the opposite, that the Phillies fans and they were the ones that were always the rowdy ones, and
Well,
had a
yeah,
good
well,
time there.
they threw snowballs at Santa Claus at the vet.
Football was a whole different atmosphere.
Oh, yeah.
No, I have yet to be at a Phillies game, but no, that would have been awesome probably back in the day being at the vet, and any of those multi-purpose stadiums, especially back in the 70s and 80s, Three Rivers, the vet, when you got to Cincinnati, those were probably some interesting. I went to Exhibition Stadium up in Toronto to watch a game. That was interesting back in the day. Tony Fernandez and George Bell and all those guys, and it didn't have a lot of class, but it was good baseball nonetheless. I mean, you didn't go up there for the stadium, you went up there for the baseball. So that's for sure.
Yeah.
I'm heading down to Camden Yards tomorrow for the weekend for the Phillies. Camden Yards is a nice ballpark.
It
It's
is.
one of my top favorites. It's a little bit older now, but when it first opened up, it was one of the best. I thought. Nice
Yeah.
area. It
Yeah,
needs
that's
some
certainly kind of
improvement. The area around there is going downhill, and hopefully they'll put some money into it that Rubenstein and all those guys have now. So hopefully they build it back up. But it's a nice ballpark.
yeah. My sister lives in Baltimore, and I remember she lived right downtown when they built that. And I think I counted it off one time. It was about 288 steps from Pickles Bar and Grill, which is right across the street there from Camden Yards. I have yet to watch a game. Hopefully this year we're going down. That's the plan, is to go down and watch the Yankees down there. But yeah, I've heard nothing but great things about Camden Yards.
Again, I don't want to make it about the money, but when they first opened Camden, it was just before my wife and I had children. So we would run down to York, and I guess there was the Orioles store down there. You could buy bleacher seats. They were $4 a piece. So we'd get basically 10 different weekends, spend 80 bucks, and that was our entertainment on Sundays. But and they had some good teams back. I think it was around, I think they opened 92 or so, but they had some good teams, and those were some good games. But
Definitely
Tony, that's
better than
exactly
the
what my
Orioles
wife,
Stadium.
what
Go
was
ahead,
that?
Mike.
my wife and I, we go down to the Orioles store at the York Galleria,
Yeah,
settle down.
yeah, people line up pretty good, but I think that was before the internet, right? And the fees weren't bad. I don't remember. I don't even remember the fees, but
Oh,
it was $4 a bleacher seat. I was curious about running down this weekend, and I think somebody wanted $60 for a bleacher seat. So
Oh,
goodness.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a little different.
yeah.
Yeah. That's probably one of the regrets too that I have, is I was never able to get to see Cal Ripken play. That must have been fantastic to watch him on the field.
It was funny though when in one of those years, and I'm sure I could look at the his stat line. One of those years, he couldn't hit his way out of a paper bag. I mean, it was that bad. Um, and I think there's a lot of people who say that they built Camden Yards in some of the dimensions just for Cal Ripken, in left field and that kind of thing. And um, yeah, I mean, obviously a great player and tremendous stats, but that one particular year, if he hit 220 or 230, I'd be surprised. It was just kind of awful.
Mike, do you have a favorite ballpark?
Oh, I mean, if you'd say favorite, I mean, I would say probably Camden Yards. And the vet had the nostalgia. I've been to the old Yankee Stadium, and that was just awesome. Have not been to the new one. I went last year to the Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati. My employer, we had our annual conference out in Cincinnati, and part of the conference was go to a ball game. That was really nice. But I'd say Camden Yards, and I think Scott kind of alluded to the area, and my wife and I, we used to go back in the '90s, and so we'd make a day out of it. We'd drive down to Fells Point, and we take the water taxi all around, and
Being a barber used to be really nice.
it used to be great. It used to be great. I I went there in the '96 ALCS. And that might have been the most ruckus game I have ever been to because the Yankees, the Yankee, of course, this is '96, and so this is the Yankees, first postseason since what '81, I guess, or I guess first postseason success since '81. And I tell you, that was being out in the left field bleachers during that game was a pretty hopping experience because the Yankees won, and let's just say a few of the Yankee fans they decided it was a good idea to start rubbing it in, and boy, it was a pretty yeah, it was a pretty rough time, but it was a great game. Bernie Williams, Paul O'Neill, Darryl Strawberry, all hit home runs. Bases loaded. I think the eighth, Mariano Rivera comes in and gets out of it with it was a great experience.
Karen, other than the three ballparks in Pittsburgh, was there any other ones that you went to?
Fenway
Hmm.
and I think that's about it for a while. I mean, the ballparks in Pittsburgh, there was Forbes Field, which was I worked at Presby, so I was right across Forbes Field's right behind me. Three Rivers Stadium. But see, I lived in Pittsburgh, so a lot of my neighbors were Steelers and Pirates and and Penguins.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that was fun. I like that. I like going to Fenway. It was kind of a trip, a long trip,
Yeah.
but it's changed a lot from a lot of things. With Three Rivers Stadium, that was easy. Now you got to really look and see and try and take a loan out to buy tickets almost. I think that's what's been the biggest problem for a lot of people. You can't afford a lot of the stuff. But they do have, that I found, they have a Honus Wagner Museum in Pittsburgh,
Mhm.
or Roberto Clemente Museum, of
Yeah.
course. And I thought that was kind of interesting because you don't see the Honus Wagner one right away. It's kind of stuck in one of the on the streets, but I think that's nice that they have one.
Have you ever gone over to the parking lot that's outside of the new football stadium, which is where the exhibition park was, where they played the first World Series, and the chapter members from the Forbes Field chapter in Pittsburgh there, they went out and they marked where home plate and all the bases and the pitching rubber was. And
Oh,
it's permanently marked into the parking lot.
well, that's great.
Yeah, it's right there. I don't know if the restaurant's still there, but Jerome Bettis used to have a restaurant right down there by the
Yeah, it's
water.
closed now. They closed that.
Did they? Well, the
Yeah.
parking lot was right across from the bus's restaurant, and that's where they laid it all out. That's where the ballpark used to be. In fact, if you look at, there's an early picture of the first World Series between Pittsburgh and I think it was Boston. I think it was Boston Pilgrims at the time. The river flooded the ballpark. That's how close it was to the river. And but yeah, they took the time to mark it all out. So if you ever get out there, you can stand where Honus used to stand.
That would be nice. I'd like to see that. And the homestead grades,
Yep.
uh, Josh Gibson's family, they have a thing, presentation here in one of these, and it's really interesting. to see that and to see the Negro League.
Well, that's a good segue, Karen. I mean, what about everybody's feelings about the news that just came out in the last couple of weeks about the Negro League statistics being incorporated into the record books?
I
How's
think
everybody with
that's,
what's everybody's feelings on that?
I think it's great. I think Josh Gibson has been somebody who he kind of was, you didn't hear a lot about him.
Yep.
But now, I mean, his great grandson, I think it is.
As the
Uh,
foundation.
yes. And I've been to that when he had that on, and it's really an interesting foundation. So, and I thought the Heinz Center also has a lot of information for the Negro Leagues too.
Well, the I guess Ty Cobb got knocked off of being number one. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't get
That's
knocked
why
off.
that's why I got so much attention. Had that not happened, I don't think it would have got the attention that it's getting. Saw a great piece. I don't know if anybody has an MLB network, but MLB Now is a show they have on there, and Brian Kenny and Bob Costas had a real good discussion around this. I thought it was really, they really got into the details on, what happens if we find more statistics down the road, and how's that going to get incorporated, and it's really interesting. I think. I mean, a lot of years and a lot of work people put into this.
Oh yeah.
I think somebody had a line recently in regard to Hank Aaron that they were hoping I think, because I believe he briefly played in the Negro Leagues, I believe. And there was a hope that they could find like 14 or 15 home runs so he could topple Barry Bonds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that actually Willie Mays did benefit from that as well, because I think Willie Mays played in the Negro Leagues for
Yes.
a very brief period of time while he was 17 or 18 before he got his contract, and he was able to bump his numbers up 50, I can't remember what, 10 to 15, 20 hits, a few home runs. So no, I think it's really neat. I'll tell you the amount of time and energy that I'm sure that went into that to cultivate all those statistics, right? Because the record keeping back then, from what I've been able to read and see, it was poor, right? It was inconsistent, probably, instead of poor, more consistent than anything else. So for them to be able to go back and cull through all that information, to be able to come up with the statistics they did and verify that, right? I mean, I think it's fantastic.
I think the biggest complaint folks have is they see that they played a 60 game season, but they're not looking at how long that season really was, all the games that they didn't count, that they played on the side just to make money to keep going. And
They barnstormed from town to town.
they did. And people don't want to take that
And
into
none of
serious.
that counts, right? None of the barnstorming stuff
Nope.
counts.
No,
Nope.
I don't believe so.
Nope. But they
No,
played a
I
lot
think
of
you're right.
games.
Yeah.
Do
That
you
60
think it
game
should
season,
be
right?
counted?
It is something to think through. But again, I think that's a valid point. I mean,
Do
those
you
are just the
think the
games that they were probably able to
barnstorming
count on.
should be counted?
I don't think they kept a lot of stats during those barnstorming games, so they didn't count a lot of them or any of them.
Yeah, and I don't think there was a lot of press coverage, so there was nothing documented.
And didn't like Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, they barnstormed too. So
Yes.
if you counted that, their numbers would change.
Well, it was just a way of everybody, the money that they were making back in those days was nothing. So they had to supplement it somehow.
But again, it dovetails with our prior discussion. That's why, unfortunately, now all the seats are so expensive because somebody's
Amen,
paying the
brother.
30 or $40 million contracts. Again, it's sad, but I'm old enough to remember I think it was the famous, Mickey Mantle first $100,000 player, and the way it's changed, obviously, in the last, especially the last 10 years, it's crazy. I mean, unfortunately, it's going to get passed on to the fans, when they have payrolls of what is it, 220, 40, $50 million.
Well,
So,
with the way the TV contracts cover a lot of that course, I don't know why it all has to be passed on to the fans.
right. I did a thing. I think I looked a couple of years ago. Again, because again, I remember specifically, and I have the old yearbooks, $4, 250, and a buck 50 or a buck for bleachers. In today's dollars, I think that comes out to box seats maybe around $55, something like that. And again, especially for the Yankee fans here. Does anyone know what the price of those, the $700 seats at Yankee Stadium, and the seats are always empty because I guess they're all owned by corporations and stuff. It's insane. I mean, it shouldn't be that way, but obviously it is.
It was 10 years ago. I worked for Turkey Hill, and we had seats there because we had sponsorship with the Yankees. And it was about 20 rows away from first base, and those seats were going. Ticket value was $250 a ticket, and that was 10 years ago.
Well,
You can imagine what they are today. I went to
Well, I
one
know
game.
when I went there last year, we paid I think it was 125 for bullpen seats, which bleacher seats, bullpen seats, not bad, but far, higher than it should have been.
Per seat or for multiple seats?
Per seat. Yeah. But I
That's
will say this though, what Major League Baseball is doing to the fans, I think, the minor leagues are going to reap the benefits of this. Because I'll tell you, I will gladly go down to a Harrisburg Senators game. As a matter of fact, we're going on Father's Day, and it's, $18 a seat, box seats right behind home plate. And it's good baseball and it's fun. And, the minor
Oh, yeah.
league is doing an amazing job making it as family friendly as possible. When I was just the other thing, I was down in Atlanta, on a business trip recently. Hey, great, I could get a ticket for $11, right? But I was on, the third row, last row. So I got it for $11, but the beer that I drank cost me $11.50. So I mean, that was there you go.
Yeah, and again, Steve, I don't know if you're on when I was lamenting that, how when did a hot dog and a water add up to $18 or whatever it is at Yankee
Right.
Stadium?
Crazy.
It's unfortunate and stuff.
Yeah. Yep. And that's gonna, impact the next generation. How we're gonna keep the fan base going is gonna be very difficult.
it seems like at this point, they're gonna go to the minor leagues. Because it's it's not as expensive.
Yep.
And they're family friendly.
Yeah, I agree with you, Karen. That or the Banana Baseball World Tour, that seems to be packing in the house.
The banana.
Yeah, it's sold out
You can't,
Fenway,
you
right?
can't even get tickets for that.
Right, I know.
What
Fenway
is
was
it?
They're
sold out.
sold out every
Banana.
place they go, and they're doing major league stadiums. Unbelievable.
Yes. And it was a joke. That's what got me. It was just a joke. And it took over.
Because they haven't even been around that long, I think. Am I correct? Because
Oh, but
again, we were on vacation in Hilton Head a few years ago, and I took my son over, and I think it was at the time, I think Savannah may have been a Mets farm team. And it's an old ballpark. I don't know if they play in the same ballpark, but it's one of the older minor league ballparks. And that was the neat part of it. But, it was, I guess they were a struggling minor league team at the time.
Savannah Banana.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I can't remember the gentleman's name who took it over, but his business plan was just let's have fun, right? Let's make it family friendly.
Yeah.
Let's have fun.
Yeah, Jesse,
Kind of reinvented some rules or rethought about some rules. And I don't know. There's things to be learned, I think, from this.
Basically, the
the
Harlem
fact that
Globetrotters
they
of
made it-
baseball.
Yeah,
the fact
absolutely.
they made it so much fun is the other thing. They made more entertainment than anything.
And I think that's what, if somebody's taking a family to a game, that's what they want. They want, it drives me crazy when I go down to Lancaster and they have the carousel. I mean, I understand with the little kids and all, but like if the kids want to go play on the carousel or the rides or something like that, and dad has to take them over here. Dad's not seeing no baseball. I mean,
Yeah.
very little baseball. So I mean, I understand the entertainment value for a family, but that's what it's all about. Like you said, the minor leagues is family friendly. So
Has anyone ever gone to a Cape Cod League game?
no.
we went a few years ago, and that was a really neat experience. Because it's obviously very, very talented college players, literally playing at high school fields with scouts kind of everywhere. And I remember my son and I were basically sitting next to a scout. He had a gun, radar gun and stuff like that. And it was just, it's a very, it's kind of the way baseball should be almost. You know what I mean? It's just very pure wood bats as opposed to, the college and, so you're not getting the 15, 14 college scores or whatever, but it's really good talent and it's a pretty fun experience.
Yep. They had something like that down outside, down in Southern Maryland, don't they? Scott, the Big Train League or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a league down there. I think it goes down into North Carolina, all the way down to North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's another college league up in New York, and I think maybe northern Pennsylvania as well, central New York. I think these college leagues are starting to become more prevalent too. Like Tony was saying, it's they've always had talent, right? Colleges have always had talent. It's just finding a place to play in the summer outside of the Cape Cod League, which was really for the elite. But Tony, I agree with you. I think when you get to these college summer programs and summer leagues, the baseball is incredible. There are some really quality players that are on the field,
Yeah, it was just
and it's
from my
cheap.
perspective, it was just an enjoyable experience. It was just kind of people, they had stands and stuff, but obviously a lot of people sitting on blankets and just, it was nice. It was nice. It was a nice activity.
Yeah, and those kids become members of the community too, right? Because they
Yeah,
stay with
they
host
in
families
the
and all
Cape
this other
Cod
stuff.
League, they live with the locals,
Yep.
and yeah, it's but that you're right though. That is the elite of the elite, I guess. And
Yeah. Yeah. But that model has filtered through, I think, a lot of these college leagues. And again, I think it's really neat that, the community gets involved. And then, that's something in the summertime. You always had Legion baseball or Pony League and Babe Ruth leagues, but this is really something that I think a lot of the communities are getting behind because they're getting, again, some really quality kids coming in playing baseball, doing some really good things for themselves, but more importantly, I think for the community as well.
Yep. Well, if we exhausted that subject, how about another one, an elephant in the room? What about this gambling in baseball, the latest scandal? What's your take on that? The guy from San Diego.
yeah, well, I don't know if that was directed to me or anybody else because
No,
you meant the
that's
player who
out in the
got banned
open.
from San Diego,
Huh?
the
Oh
guy who
no, no,
got
no,
banned.
no, 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 not for that reason, Tony. No, no.
No, 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 no.
He was with
Look,
Pittsburgh when he did it. So I mean,
yeah,
I'm picking on Karen too, I guess.
yeah. No, look, I think the only thing I'll say, again, and it's any sport at this point, the tie-in between, I don't want to watch a major league game and hear what the odds are during the game by the announcers. I mean, I find that unbelievably offensive. Okay, and it's just, I mean, I think it's this they got a problem because I mean it's gambling is now so tied in. You're gonna ultimately have issues.
Scott,
I don't
Mike,
think
and I
this is the
went.
first or last we hear about this.
Scott, Mike, and I went to lunch one time back before just around the beginning of the season. And I think Mike brought this up. He said, "What do you think about this?" Because it's everywhere. DraftKings. I mean, you see it everywhere. And I think, in fact, in the book that we're reading for the book club, he mentions the fact that in some stadiums there's actually kiosks where you can place bets. But
Everyone has that.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the way it's going, like Mike said, it's only a matter of time, and we no longer had that lunch, and then this Otani thing broke with his interpreter, and now you got this guy in San Diego was doing some reading. I mean, it wasn't just him. There was a pitcher with the A's got a 1 year suspension out of it, and three minor leaguers got a suspension, including the guy from the Reading Phillies, an infielder from the Phillies. And yeah, I mean, it pro sports or just sports in general, they're opening themselves up to some real serious problems. I mean, Not that they're, I'm not saying that they're in bed with the gamblers, but I think they're in the bedroom taking their shoes and socks off.
I think the guy from the A's was making him as $800,000 a year, and he bet like $20. It was something ridiculous, small amount. So you're gonna put your whole career in jeopardy. Ever? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I just put in the chat a real interesting article I read about how players are getting accosted by gamblers, by like folks who are betting on the games.
That's what I was going to mention
Saw
to
that.
you.
Used to be like, you're a bum, you struck out.
It's
Now,
become
you're a
vitriol.
bum, you just cost me money.
Yeah,
No, it's vitriol. And I think it's very scary.
it's scary. You're right.
But I think the fact that the announcers and the teams are almost normalizing this is just, it's not what you want. Again, I can tell you when my son went to college, and he started just talking about too much his friends like to gamble, and so we had a little conversation at the time. And again, you only control your kids so much, but it's just, I mean, I think it's a bad look. We all love baseball for the fact we love baseball. We don't have to have money riding on it, obviously. But it's just, I think that it bleeding into the announcers and into the advertising and them talking about the odds and stuff. To me, it's really disturbing. And again, coming from my life that I just left as a career prosecutor, I mean, I can tell you, you do investigations. Trust me, Major League Baseball could find more problems than they want to find. And they got lucky in the Ohtani thing, assuming what we all hear is true, that he had nothing to do with any of it and all that kind of stuff. But it could have been, their poster child, their biggest star, could have been tied up deeply in this. And I think they should be concerned about that.
I think it's just a matter of time before that happens. I think it's a ticking time bomb that eventually one of the big stars is going to get caught. I just feel coming. I'm reading that Pete Rose book that we're reading right now. I don't know about you, Frank, because I think you read the whole book. I am just blown away by how much money he was gambling. It is just crazy.
Not only gambling, but he was stiffing his bookies.
Yeah, he wasn't even paying them. It's amazing.
Well,
And
and
the
look,
amazing,
normal people may not have the kind of money, but it's to gamble. But again, when guys are when 250 hitters are making a couple of $1 million a year, whatever it is, that, and they're looking for the next thrill. It's all problematic.
Yeah, there seems to be a significant, at least in my opinion, there's a significant disconnect between the rules of baseball, right? Etiquette rules, right? Players shall not gamble. And then you see exactly what we're talking about here, right? You have advertisements in stadiums, you have advertisements on the field, you have commercial breaks, right? I mean, it wasn't that long ago where, two of the greats of baseball were suspended, right? Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays because they were endorsing, I believe,
they were just
Harris.
greeters at the casino.
Right. That's all they were doing. But because they were associated with gambling, right, they were removed until and I think it was they basically, I can't remember if it was an agreement or they had stopped their endorsement of that casino. But I mean, it was very, very much, I don't want to say black and white, but it was pretty crystal clear what you needed to do and what you didn't need to do when you were playing baseball. And I think that we have really muddied the waters here, where we still have these rules. You can't gamble, but it's very, very accessible. And I think that's part and parcel, right? Why the Pittsburgh player, he's banned for life because apparently he bet on the games he was playing in, right? While a lot of the others were betting on games they didn't play in.
Right.
So I don't know, either modify the gambling rules or, you might have to look somewhere else to earn some income and maybe not have those endorsements from gambling. But that's
And
a
I
hard
think
pill
you're
to
going to see it
swallow.
in other sports too, because
Oh, absolutely.
back in April, the guy from Toronto Raptors got banned for life. He was
Yeah.
passing information, but
Yep.
like you said, with Manuel Mays, they got removed from baseball for a while. Back in it was either the late 50s, early 60s. Alex Karras and Frank Gifford, I think, were suspended for a year
Yep.
from football.
Joe Namath had to sell his interest in Bachelor's 3, the
Yep.
bar.
I mean, it's always been there. I mean, I look. I was always amazed how much gambling there was on college football and college basketball. I mean, there is so much money that's just involved there. It's mind-boggling. But yeah, I agree with Scott. Sooner or later, something's going to happen. And it's just going to explode.
Yeah, and it's going to be ugly.
And they brought it on themselves by letting this come in. I don't know if it's Manfred to blame or what, but
Yeah. Well, and I would say this, if nothing else, the recent actions that they took against these players strengthens the argument against Pete Rose ever getting reinstated, right? Because at least they're from a rules interpretation, right, and a rules application, they're still staying true to that. So that doesn't help his case that just happened. That's for sure. And I got to get that book. I haven't read that book. It sounds like a really great read.
It is eye-opening.
yeah. Well, I don't know if it was Tony mentioned something about the investigation or what they can turn up, what MLB can find out. Well, if you read that book, I mean, I remember when the investigation of Pete was going on, and there was a lot of speculation of what they were finding and all. But when you read that book, I mean, they had him chapter and verse. I mean, they boxed him into a corner, and he thought he could get out, but there was no way of getting out. I mean, they just had him cornered. I mean, he had no options. It's amazing how they tracked everything down.
Yeah. It is, right? So I think that's still a valid argument for reinstating Pete Rose, right? When all those things we talked about, right? How in the world can this entity, Major League Baseball, and for that fact, all the sports, have the association with gambling and casinos and still hold their players accountable, right?
Exactly.
For not being involved. I get it. I get the argument both ways, but I think that argument for keeping Pete Rose out or not reinstating him, right? At least reinstatement first and then an election to the Hall of Fame. That argument is getting weaker and weaker, especially when you look at some of the stuff that happened in college, like with Reggie Bush. Applying today's rules to something that happened 15 years ago. When you look at it through a current lens, I don't know, does it change things? Like I said there, I think there's a valid argument for it.
The one topic I wanted to bring up was the Hall of Fame. What's the new credentials for a pitcher to get into the Hall of Fame? You're not going to see a 300 win pitcher anymore. So, what's the criteria for our pitchers today to get into the Hall of Fame?
You're barely seeing a 300 hitter anymore.
300 quality starts.
I was going to say the cynic in me was going to say a couple of quality starts, a couple of 6 innings, maybe 85 pitches, and then they put them back in. Ridiculous. Their arms are not going to fall off necessarily.
I honestly don't know what the new criteria is going to be. It's strikeouts. I don't. It's wins it's gone. You're not going to have that again.
Well, same thing with the hitters. I mean, what are they going to go in on based on their launch angles and exit velocities?
Yeah, no, it's sad. I looked at the stats today, and I think in the American League, I think there's 4 players that are above 300 right now, hitting wise, and I think the highest win total is 9. Mid-season's coming around, and the highest win total is 9.
But it is some of that because teams, what do they carry? 14 pitchers now, and
yeah,
11 of them throw 100 miles an hour. It's just I think it's a different game to a degree, and I know they've changed a little bit with the rules lately, but you look at the old days. What was it? Bob Gibson, 1968. I think it was 35 starts and 28 complete games, something like that.
Well, he had the low ERA, and then that was the same year Denny McLean had the 30-win season. So what do? They turn around and lower the mound.
But I mean, just again, from when I was a kid and I started watching baseball, you basically didn't have, again, I always call it the Tony La Russa effect. You didn't have 6 or 7 or 8 guys pitching in the same game. You basically, I mean, you had your starters, and then you had your quote unquote guys that were barely hanging on were your bullpen pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think the game is, I mean, it's definitely become a game of specialists, and obviously it's affected the offense too. I mean, say what you want. I mean, somebody throwing at 100 miles an hour is, back in the day there was whatever, it was Nolan Ryan and Marichal and Gibson, and but people didn't throw as hard as they throw now.
I watched Paul Skeens pitch the other day, and all I keep thinking is it's just a matter of time.
Oh, the arm's going to go
before the arm goes.
Oh, it's going to go.
Is he full out at every pitch? Is that basically?
It seems that way to me. I mean,
yeah,
how many times did he throw over 100 in one game?
Yeah, Scott, I think WAR is going to be probably what they're going to look to, for better or for worse. I think that's going to be
WAR, or is it
right? Oh, don't.
Well, I have to go, but it's a nice talking to you all.
Karen, take care.
Yeah, Karen, see
Bye,
you.
Karen. Nice meeting you.
Good seeing you.
Yeah, I got to go too, guys. So thanks. This is a great idea, Scott. Thanks for pulling this together.
Yeah. Well, we were going to talk about a little bit about things in the future, Mike. We'll get back to you about it. Something for the chapter for some in-person things. So maybe after we're done shooting the breeze here, maybe we'll stop the recording and try to do a little quick business meeting here.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'd love to get. Yeah, love to.
We want to get together in person
thing or something. Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, take care,
Mike. We'll see you, Mike.
Bye bye.
I'm going to stop recording here, Frank.
Yeah, we might as well. I think we covered a lot of topics. We don't have a lot of participation, but we can throw a few things